what we're hearing, both Commonwealth of Learning and UNESCO, is we're getting feedback from our member states asking for assistance in how to address that growing importance of ICT in education and to try to provide some framework for how to handle it. And so what we found as we've been working in the various countries in the Caribbean in developing OER and ICT in education policies is that it's not sufficient to just look at open educational resources. You really need to look at that in the context of ICT in education. And so when we started out these activities, we were focusing primarily on OER policy, and we found the feedback we were getting from the countries we were working in was we really need to situate that within a broader framework of ICT in education. And so that's how we've evolved, and so our focus is on developing OER policy, but also putting that within a larger framework of ICT in education.
Participants, today you will be made more aware of OERS, and more importantly, we will go a step further to help in developing a draft policy for open education resources. This policy will represent the country's position with regard to the creation, use, and distribution of educational materials. This policy is very important in light of us achieving our goals and objectives in our White Paper 2009-2019. You have been carefully selected to attend this workshop because your expertise and feedback are needed. As teachers and students use their government-given laptops in instruction and learning, more and more resources will be accessed, and it behooves us at the Ministry to ensure that proper procedures and policies are in place. Additionally, today's knowledge society demands that knowledge and skills play a major role in poverty reduction and the promotion of socio-economic growth.
But you're deploying computers, you're supplying devices to your students. That means there's financial resources in place. You're supplying devices to your teachers. Again, that means we've got at least enough money to get some infrastructure and equipment in place. You are high up the list globally in terms of internet penetration. Your connections to your schools are not big enough yet, but that's a solvable problem. And so you have all the elements in place that you need to leverage that to educational advantage. So our key objective here is going to be not how can we come up with grand new initiatives, but how can you consolidate the investments you've already made as a country and make sure that they have the educational impact that you want them to have. But again, I highlight these two key strengths. You have a small system, which means we can engage everybody. Number two, you already have most of the building blocks in place. So our focus can be on consolidating and leveraging those building blocks. One thing that I want to assure you with 100% certainty is that if we do not consolidate and leverage those building blocks, you are going to find that the ICT investments you have made will drain the budget of the country without any educational benefit. In fact, it will have the reverse effect that it will reduce quality. Because if the money is being spent on ICT that's not being well used, then it means that money is not being spent on something else where it could have been well used. And that means that the quality will actually go down. Do you understand what I'm saying? So that makes this, in my view, a critical two-day discussion. Because if we can work out how to leverage that investment effectively, then we can reverse that situation. We can see learning gains. We can see changes in the way in which classroom practice is happening. And I think the country can benefit tremendously as a consequence. And it's quick and it's easy. I want you to understand those two key messages. You have everything you need. We can move very fast. We don't have to wait. This is not a process where then we'll get you next March, next April, and we'll be deciding what we want to do. I'm going to draft a policy statement next week. The policy statement will come out to you all for you to review and to comment and to finalize. And I hand it over to the PS and the Minister, and they must take it to Cabinet and get it approved once they've got everyone's input. And we're having a briefing session with the Minister and the PS tomorrow at 4:30 p.m. after the other workshop finishes. And we're going to take them through the agreements that we reach so that I can make sure I've received the top political input into that document. But you'll get an opportunity to provide your input into that. And once we've got that in place, we can generate the master plan quickly as well. So this is not something that requires waiting and long processes. It can happen fast. And we need it to happen fast because we need you to leverage the investments you've already made.
Open educational resources are basically any materials that can be used to support education that are available freely without significant restrictions on their use. So they have a copyright that allows people to use them, adapt them, repurpose them. And when we talk about resources, we can be talking about something as simple as lesson plans and tips for teachers, all the way up to interactive multimedia resources that are available primarily on the internet, although an open educational resource can be a printed document. It doesn't have to be something that's digital. But increasingly when we talk about open educational resources these days, we're talking about digital resources that can be accessed on the internet. I think it really depends on how the country decides to make use of open educational resources and the kind of policies they have in place to make that possible. And I think that's one of the key points or key issues around this policy workshop, is to try to ensure that countries have the appropriate policies in place that will allow the school systems, the educational systems, to make use of the vast resources that are available on the internet that can be used to support education. There's a number of benefits that come from that. I mean, the most obvious one is just the cost savings, because these materials are free. You don't need to purchase resources. You can access them on the internet. But there's much more significant benefits that come from the ability that is created for teachers and students to actually create their own resources and then share them on the internet. And so once we start using open educational resources effectively, we create a kind of a culture of content development and sharing that can really help develop the skills of students and teachers to access information, use information, develop content. And so I think there's tremendous potential there for open educational resources to significantly support the educational systems in a country. In this workshop, the focus is on developing, or at least starting the process of developing an ICT in education policy that has within it some provisions around open educational resources. So St. Kitts has already done some work in this area, and they have an educational strategy from several years back. But to my knowledge, there is no ICT in education policy as such. And so what we're hoping to achieve at the end of this workshop is to have actually a draft ICT in education policy that can be then sent out for wider consultation and revision, and then hopefully adopted within a matter of a few months, because we think we'll have made enough progress that we'll be able to actually start the consultation process around a draft ICT in education policy that has within it provisions specifically addressing open educational resources.
Regarding the benefits of using open educational resources, I think it's clear that given the ICT infrastructure that's been supplied to all of the schools in St. Kitts, particularly at the secondary level where all Form 1 to 5 students already have their own laptops and more are planned for distribution during the course of the next year, we can start harnessing all of the openly available content on the internet to support students being able to learn in more flexible, self-paced and tailored ways that match the needs that they have as individual learners and their preferred learning approaches. So I think that the key to using open educational resources effectively is really to focus first on the development of the skills of teachers to be able to design different kinds of classroom-based experiences which depend less on them lecturing content to students or referring them just to the prescribed textbook, and more on encouraging students to actually take responsibility for their own learning and use the resources of the laptops and the internet to find high-quality open educational resources and systematically use that to prepare themselves for the requirements of the different regional examinations, particularly in the first instance, the Caribbean Senior Certificate. I think that the Federation is very much on the right path in working towards that set of goals or achieving the effective use of open educational resources. And the way in which we're going about doing that at the moment is by focusing first on developing a broad ICT in education policy for the country. So we're running a 2-day workshop at the moment. At the end of that workshop, we should be able to draft that policy. It will then go through various consultation processes before hopefully being approved by the Cabinet. Once we've got that policy and framework in place and there's political commitment to it, it then becomes much easier for us to identify the key operational strategies we need to put in place in order to ensure that the use of OER in our classrooms becomes a reality. I think that one of the key next steps we need to take in addition to that is to start finding all of the locally produced content that exists in St. Kitts and Nevis and make sure that it's shared online through the government websites so that students can gain access to that material. But also I think working in collaboration with the Commonwealth of Learning and UNESCO, it'll be possible for us to start constructing websites with entire integrated packages of content, open educational resources that students can use to do their own studies, to do more self-paced study, to do more independent study, to be able to work outside of classroom time. And we need, in parallel with that, to implement professional development programs for teachers so that they can learn how to shift their focus from delivering content in classes to being high-level facilitators of the learning of students.
The schools are already benefiting from things such as smart boards, of course, computers we've mentioned before, laptops. So there are many devices that schools already are utilizing that captures the use of ICT. And so even as we have this workshop being implemented, we want to, again, build on these strengths and be better able to prepare our students to function in a 21st century environment. Of course, this means that some of our traditional teaching methods will be adjusted, and of course all of these we envision, as we discuss, as we deliberate, are going to be points that are raised. But in the end, we really are looking forward to a document that is going to speak to or be a road map for a success story.
The open education resources has the potential to help to transform our education system. It has the potential to make the delivery of education more cost effective. And so from that standpoint, it would be a welcome change in terms of making our education system better. These are days when technology is having a greater impact on the delivery of education. And so clearly this is one of the things that we would welcome, because then you have a more widespread availability of resources that can help to make our teaching and learning experiences much better, make our classrooms more effective, and as such overall have a positive impact on the education system.